From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In this podcast, I sit down with my amazing friend, Kathy Zant, and we talk about passkeys and how you can implement them into your website for website security. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. Sit down and listen to Kathy and I. This episode of the SDM Show is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey all, Rob Cairns here. And today I have the pleasure of having my good friend Kathy Zant with me. And we're going to talk everything about passkeys. How are you today, Kathy?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on again, Rob.
Such a pleasure. So let's talk passwords in general. Passwords are an issue. We both know that. We've both spent our time in the security space. We both know people like to use words like password 1234 pound, and they like to use words in the dictionary, and the average
or your
user,
pets,
or your pets' names, or your birthday, or a form of your mother's maiden name, and so on and so forth. And then we went to two-step authentication. So the way I do two-step is I use an authenticator app. I've used an YubiKey before, which is a high security key for two-step. And for a lot of people, that's complicated. And then we throw this mess in called passkeys. So why?
Well, passwords are kind of broken. I remember back in the day, and you and I have both been in tech for a super long time. And I remember back in the day when our network password was like Floby or something like that, because the guys thought it was funny, and that's what we used. And we had all of these different permeations of what passwords were, but it was okay back then. You had dictionary attacks that happened and things like that. And we just kind of got creative with passwords, but no more. With all of the breaches that have happened over, the past decade, all of these passwords have ended up in databases, and malicious actors trade them on the dark web. Maybe they just trade them on email anymore, or I don't even know. But anyway, it's very easy to get collections of passwords and then write a script to just brute force into things, whether that's your bank account or your WordPress site. And so then two-factor comes along. But unfortunately, because of the complexity associated with it, there are only about 20, it's in the 20s. It's less than 30%. There's the quotable. Less than 30% of users actually use two-factor authentication. So passwords are broken. The entire system of a username, a password, and two-factor isn't really working. But luckily, people who are incredibly intelligent and know security have come up with a protocol called WebAuthn. And this is super cool because now you can authenticate with all sorts of different things without a password. Fun stuff.
That is fun stuff. And if anybody's concerned about passwords, there's a really good website out there called If I've Been Pwned.
Yes.
And if you go there and you put in your email address or your account address or whatever it is, it will tell you all the passwords that it knows that have been breached sort of around that. So that's a really good resource. It's not like it used to be. And I think part of the problem is in the web world, and I come from a a corporate infrastructure world where we forced our users to change their passwords every 30 days. And, it's always the push-pull between the users and the IT security department and the third-party audit department that comes in and tells you what you really should do.
Right. Yeah, and they've done studies. There's plenty of recommendations that are out there now saying that changing your passwords every 30 days does not make you safer. Users will cycle through passwords or just change one digit or forget them altogether. But that doesn't actually make anybody safer. Now, luckily, we have things like password managers like 1Password and LastPass and everything where people can make incredibly complex passwords and not even really have to ever look at them and just authenticate that way. But you're still dealing with just one variable, right? And if you're dealing with one variable, there's always the chance that, eventually those passwords can get cracked. But passkeys really changes the equation. The other big thing that, passwords lead towards is phishing. How many times you hear stories of people who receive an email, your Facebook account needs to be authenticated, and they go and they type in their password, or maybe it's like a super complex password, but a user just doesn't realize they're getting phished and gives up their password to a phishing kit somewhere. And so then that super secure 16-digit password is now in the hands of a hacker, and they know exactly what account that's for. When you're dealing with bank accounts or your email, where a lot of the two-factor types of things can happen, you're really putting accounts at risk with just having one variable be, the thing that is between your account and a malicious actor.
So true. When I was in healthcare, we used to run tests with our help desk and try to social re-engineer our way past the checks and balances to get passwords.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it's not as hard as you think. I can remember one day calling up the help desk on Saturday with a new staff member working on my team and basically telling him I had direct line to the EVP, and if he didn't do what I wanted, I was calling the executive vice president now.
Yeah.
And he gave up a password he never should have.
Right.
And the legendary Kevin Mitnick is kind of an expert in that space. His whole theory is all about social reengineering. So
Yep. That's some of the most fun stuff to me, because it's not necessarily about the technology. It's about psychology, and it's about the con, and it's about tricking people into believing something that is true that maybe not be true. So I hear all kinds of stories of people getting an entire organization breached just because they have bad password hygiene. I think Verizon does that, annual survey of security. And in their most recent one, I think it was 81% of breaches were because of credentials, because of passwords, either that it was brute forced or that it was socially engineered out of someone. So those types of things just, for the security of all of our systems, there needs to be a better way. And passkeys really are the solution to right now. I'm sure like in 10 years, they'll find a way to make passkeys insecure somehow, because it's constantly a cat and mouse game, right? But right now, WebAuthn and its implementation that most of the big organizations like Apple is really driving this hard. Google and Microsoft also, they're calling it passkeys instead of passwords. We're now going to have passkeys. And this is really the wave of the future. I would say in the next few years, we're not going to be using passwords anymore, except for on very, very obscure systems. Most of our authentication is going to happen because of passkeys. And that to me is super exciting.
So I have a question for you. So why are we using passkeys and not biometrics? So I'm going to get you to weigh in on that, and then I'll throw my 2 cents into that discussion, because I have reasons why I won't use biometrics. So by biometrics, I mean Face ID, and I mean fingerprints. Why aren't we doing that?
Sure. Well, passkeys is a methodology of authentication that can use biometrics, but it can also use any other kind of key, like a YubiKey can use passkeys and WebAuthn as the underlying protocol. So basically, you know PGP, how you could send secure email, right? You have a public key, and you can put it up on your website. Somebody can have your public key, and you can they can send you a message that only you can decrypt with your private key. Somewhat similar in that there's a public private key pair with passkeys. So your private key is something that's stored on your device, whether it's on your phone or it's on your laptop. And then there's a public key that's generated, and that is stored on, let's say, your WordPress site. If you're using like iTheme Security Pro now has passkeys, or if you're logging into like apple.com, they have passkeys already implemented if you're like logging in to check on an order, that sort of thing. So what ends up happening is you can use whatever kind of key that you want, so like on my laptop, I have the Apple thing. I'm pretty deep in their ecosystem. And so I have my fingerprint, and that is what I'm using to log into my computer, but it's also what I'm using for creating passkeys and for using them. So what ends up happening is, so I go onto a website, and it's like, I think Kayak is another one that's implementing passkeys, as well as PayPal. So I go on to, let's say, PayPal, and they're like, do you want to set up a passkey? Of course I do. I'm into this. So then I set up a passkey, and the private key that I have on my computer is never shared with the server, but a public key is generated on PayPal, for example. So then the next time I come to log in, PayPal sends a challenge to my computer, and my private key is used to answer that challenge. That they never get my private key transported across the internet. They never get any kind of information. It's just that encryption or that cryptography is answering the challenge in a way that matches that public key that's stored on that website. So in this way, if somebody tries to phish me for my PayPal account, for example, and like put in your password. Well, I set up a passkey. I don't have a password. So wait a minute, maybe this isn't actually PayPal. So it really protects me as a user if I ever was going to be phished by a malicious actor pretending to be PayPal. There's nothing for me to give, because that authentication is happening between my private key on my computer, stored, securely on my computer, and the public key that's on PayPal. So there is no more password for me to give up. So it makes me safer. It makes PayPal safer. It makes all of us safer. And with, what iThemes is doing, and it's so cool to work with a team that is so innovative and forward thinking and watching what's really happening here, and being able to be the first WordPress security plugin or major plugin that is bringing passkeys and, this kind of authentication to WordPress. It's really cool to see. So Timothy Jacobs is the lead developer there, and he was the one that was like, hey, this is coming. This is huge. WebAuthn is like the protocol for authentication. Let's get ready for it. He was the real driving force behind this. And I was like, I think I know what this is. I've seen this. And so it was kind of cool to watch it get developed for WordPress. It just is so neat, because like if you have a storefront, especially, you want to, say you have WooCommerce and you really want to keep everything secure, make sure that your users are able to log in very quickly with whatever authentication method that they have that passkey stored with, whether it's their fingerprint or their face or a YubiKey or something else that I think Windows has, like, it's called like Windows Hello or something like that.
Windows Hello. Yep.
Yeah. So that's basically passkeys. So however the user decides they want to activate that authentication, that's how it works. Yeah. So it's really cool for WordPress because security obviously in the WordPress space is incredibly important. And many people who are running WordPress sites, they're like, I don't want to think about all this stuff. I got a business to run. Being able to have a frictionless login that users can recognize as, okay, I know this is my Windows Hello, or this is my Touch ID, whatever it is, this is how I do it, that I can log in here and not have to log in with two-factor authentication, not have to, come up with a new password and, put another thing into LastPass or 1Password or whatever they're using. It makes for very fast logins, frictionless logins for storefronts, for learning management, for all sorts of ways that everybody uses WordPress. So it's really fun.
So well said. And I was going to get to the reason I don't like using biometrics exclusively.
Yeah.
Do you know police in North America, so we're talking Canada and US, can compel you to open up a device without a warrant if you're using biometrics? And that, for me, is a sticky.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm running around breaking the law. It's about protecting my privacy. So
right.
I refuse to use biometrics. On my phone, it's disabled. On my laptop, it's disabled. Yep.
Yeah.
I just won't go there for exactly that reason. So, passkeys. Apple's doing it. WordPress is doing it. Microsoft's working on doing it. Google's talking about going there.
Yep.
I think all the big players are headed there. Now, if we could just get our banks to do it, that would be helpful, because I find banks where we put our money are one of the biggest security issues going. I've gone through bank fraud. I did 2 years ago. It was awful. And believe it or not, my bank still, which is one of Canada's five biggest banks, still doesn't offer 2FA.
Oh, my.
So I think banks got to start doing this stuff, or be compelled to do this stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. There was, it was a long time ago, I saw this website where it was like basically all of the major banking institutions and whether or not they even offered two-factor authentication as an option. And it was abysmal. the lack of participation of banks. And a lot of them are using SMS still. I mean, to this day, there's lots of banks who are using SMS, and that is just notoriously a bad way to go, because there can be SIM swapping attacks. There's tons of stories out there about people who have been spearphished into a SIM swap attack and have, lost lots of money because of it. Some of these stories are just heart-wrenching, but, it's good to be aware of how malicious actors operate so that you can recognize the signs, because, with any breach, the faster you can respond to it, the less damage they're going to be able to do, the more likely it is you're going to recover and move forward in a positive way.
Yeah. And people need to stop relying on a false sense of security. So what I hear out there all the time is, I'm running a virus scanner. I scan my machine. Well, folks, I'm on a Windows box, and I haven't run a virus scanner on my machine in 10 years. Because people in the security space don't run virus scanners, because we know that virus scanners cause a false sense of security. My brother used to do sales for a company called Barracuda, and they are the parent company to AVG, believe it or not, amongst appliances and other stuff. And he always used to say to me, "You don't run any security software on your PC, do you?" I said, "Beyond a VPN? Nope." Yeah. Because I think people get, if I run a virus scanner and I scan my machine once a week, and I run a backup, I'm going to be fine. And I think people get lulled into the false sense of security.
Yeah. Here's a funny story for you. So, I work for a very large corporation that has an internal network that I have to log into, and I'm required to have a VAST, or a virus scanner, on my PC or on my laptop in order to log in. Which, I installed it for them. And I analyze malware. I'm on GitHub looking at new malware examples all the time. So I always have malware on, it's just mostly PHP malware and stuff, because I'm really interested in what malicious actors are doing with WordPress. But I mean, it's not going to execute. I don't have a PHP engine on here, but still, Avast is just triggering me all the time, going through all my malware and messing it up. And so, I got to do something about that.
Well, the solution to that is the one I use. I have a couple of clients who have the same requirement.
Yeah.
And what I do is I spin up a virtual machine that has the virus scanner in it that I use for only connecting to those clients.
Yeah, smart. I could do that too.
Believe it or not, with a couple clients, the virus scanner's not the same either. So I've got one virtual machine that's got Norton in it. I got one that's got McAfee in it.
Too funny.
Yeah, this is going downhill quickly, by the way. Yeah.
Too
anyway,
funny.
And the other reason for using a VM, not to get off the passkey conversation, but if I'm looking at a site that I know has been hacked, I don't want to compromise my main laptop. I'd rather use a VM that I can get rid of when I'm done.
Right. Yep. That's smart to do. Yeah.
I've done it that way. I even have a separate VM I do all my banking in. I don't do my banking on my regular machine for that exact reason. I'm like anal.
Yeah.
And I was sharing this in a podcast I did with our mutual friend Robert Rowley over at PatchStack. And one of the things I do when I'm on the road is I actually VPN home and then take a PC and then go back out to do everything I'm doing. I'm that anal, Kathy.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I mean, once you've seen some things, then it's, you are a little hyper aware of, well, you just see patterns, you see the patterns of how malicious actors operate. And so you're hyper aware of anything that looks like that pattern, right? You just have to see it enough to know, of what high risk behavior is in digital security. And you just take actions to protect against it. And everybody calls you the paranoid one. And it's just like, if you saw these things too, what do you do?
It's no longer let's put a virus out there or a malicious attack out there just to cause havoc. It's now, how can we steal your data? How can we use your machine cycles? I'll share a story. I can remember back in the day, I used to cringe on Michelangelo's birthday every year. Because anybody knows that's been in long time support, there is a virus called the Michelangelo virus. And it's set to trigger at 12:01 a.m. on his birthday every day. And it's an old DOS virus, so this is how long that goes back. And every year on Michelangelo's birthday, we'd end up with 20 machines out of commission because somebody would trig on something. And there you go. And those were not bad compared to what we have now, because now the way payloads are released is if you're doing if you infect a website, if the owner of the payload is smart, he doesn't trigger that payload for 2 to 3 months. He just leaves it there.
Yep.
And this is why, folks, you need to take backups that are more than a week old.
Right. Definitely. Yep. Whether it's your computer or your website, backups are just so important. You just having a good and testing those backups incredibly important as well. So
I'll share with you a backup funny story. I have a new laptop, as many people know, and I got up this morning and I looked at my laptop and said, I'm out of disk space. And I said, oh, what did I do here now? So I go looking at the disk space, and it turns out I set my cloud backup program to also make a local copy of my entire backup.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got going, and I looked at it and said, where did this 300 gigabytes come from?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and redundancy is important. We all know that. So.
Yeah.
So do you think, would you be switching have you switched 100% to passkeys, and would you be switching there?
When it is offered to me, which little by little, I just had to log into, was it Stripe or Square over the weekend for a client, and it asked me if I wanted to change to passkeys, and yep, sure, I am on it. So wherever it's offered, I'm definitely going to do it. It's just going to be, it's easier to log in. It makes my life easier. It makes everything much more secure. I don't have to worry about, if anything happens to, my password manager of all my client stuff, like having their Stripe or Square account, whatever, I can't even remember, having that compromised, it protects me, it protects my client, it protects everyone. So it's just, I'm moving to it as it's offered. Obviously, everybody who's implementing this right now is kind of in an educational advocacy position right now, because 95% of people do not even know what a passkey is. They have never heard of it, and they don't care, and they don't really want to know, right? They're just, they're doing their thing, and they don't know what's coming. So Apple's doing a lot of advocacy for this, as well as some of the other big organizations. iThemes, of course, which I am a part of at the moment. I am advocating for passkeys as well, because this is the most exciting thing that I've seen in WordPress security. It's so easy, and it's such a benefit to not just site owners, but to individuals who are logging into WordPress sites. It behooves WordPress site owners to offer this kind of frictionless login and these kinds of protections to their customers. So for me, it's I'm just going to beat the drum as loud as I can. And and the other thing is too, is like most of the time, if you talk to people or you talk to website developers, unless you give them a reason like, okay, this is going to make sales, or this is going to help you in your business, they don't really even want to talk about security. They want to talk about like, how is this going to benefit my customers or benefit my bottom line? That's all I really care about. And so being able to show them that, hey, this is going to be better for your customers, but it's also going to be better for you. And it's going to make sales easier because they're just going to be able to log in quickly. And you get to show yourself as an innovator in the security space that you take security more seriously than any of the other companies. Like if you're e-commerce, I take security more seriously than Amazon, because they're not offering this yet. Look at what innovators we are. It really positions anyone who adopts this as a part of their stack as someone who is forward thinking and adds that extra reputational ethos, I guess, to how their customers perceive them. So it's great opportunity for people to jump on.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even a latest package I've seen do it lately is the online version of QuickBooks now supports passkeys. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I have a couple of clients who use QuickBooks, and they were picking my brain last week and saying, do we need to turn this on? And I said, yeah, like yesterday. So the more some of these mainstream companies go, and as we've talked about, it's not as bad as going to 2FA. I think this is a much easier solution for the end user who doesn't understand technology. It really is.
Yeah. Totally. So much easier.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathy, for discussing passkeys and all things security. It's always a pleasure. Is the best way to get a hold of you on Twitter these days, I would assume, if somebody wants you?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter pretty much checking it out every day, seeing what people are talking about, although this week's been pretty interesting. Lots of craziness on Twitter right now. So yeah, Twitter, Facebook. I'm Kathy Zant everywhere. So, whatever social network you're on, I'm probably there too.
Thanks, Kathy. Have an awesome day.
Bye. Thanks, Rob.
Bye. This episode of the SDM Show is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency to handle all your WordPress website security needs. Go on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and find out how we can help you secure your website so you no longer have an issue with backups, being hacked, or your website being compromised. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to my amazing friend Kathy Zant for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing. For more information about Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. From here, you can connect to us on social media, go to our website, and even go to the podcast to subscribe. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.